That's interesting. I guess I'm interested also to know, does that kind of signal that you're kind of to the left of the National Party? Because this was sort of a party that saw itself as between Labour and National, so therefore, by some sort of definition, it was to the left of National. Does that how you sort of see yourself?
I would think it would signal that I'm a centrist, really.
So you'd see yourself as kind of on the more moderate end of the National Caucus?
I'm on the moderate wing of the National Party, that would be right. I mean, if you're going to have career in politics, you're probably going to be either in one of the two major parties or joining one of the minor parties because you're particularly keen, say, on environmental issues or a free market agenda or something of that sort. For me, going back to National was the obvious thing, and I would describe myself as a centre-right politician, putting more of the emphasis on the centre.
So in your caucus at the moment, who are the sort of people that you gravitate towards that are like-minded people? You know?
Well, I'm entirely comfortable with John Key. I mean, it comes back to Finn's point, this is not the free pass, but John, I think, is a pragmatist. I've never heard him say anything on the economy that I haven't thought is absolutely right. Bill English, I think, is taking a pragmatic line. Stephen Joyce, there are a lot of people in our party who I feel very comfortable with.
But sometimes centrism and pragmatism aren't necessarily the same thing, because you can be a centre politician, like, say, Peter Dunn, perhaps, who genuinely believes in things at the centre, or you can be pragmatic. And I guess that's one of the criticisms of John Key, that maybe they don't believe anything.
Oh, no, there's no question that they believe in things. I guess what I would say is that I'm not an ideologue. I don't sort of believe in a rigid philosophy, because times change, circumstances change, and pragmatism isn't a bad thing. It simply means that you look at what are the circumstances that we've got, how do we best govern to meet those circumstances, and with an eye on the future, to what the future needs will be.
Okay, Joe's got another question at the back here.
So I was just interested, New Zealand tragically lost our third soldier in Afghanistan this week, and I'm interested, A, do you support John Key's current position, but more interested in what criteria would you need to send New Zealand soldiers overseas in the future?
Yes, I support the current position. What has happened this week and also last month, obviously tragic, and no two ways around that. Unfortunately, that is always a possibility when you join the armed forces. As far as the future, obviously we would hope, and I say this to a young audience, we would hope that we will not need to send forces overseas, but I've been very proud of New Zealand's role, particularly in peacekeeping. I think we've got an outstanding record, and New Zealand armed personnel are very highly regarded throughout the world for that. The job that they are doing in Afghanistan is a very difficult one, but I think they're doing it with huge effectiveness, and we can be very, very proud of them. We would want to ensure that any decisions of that type that are made in the future are made because we believe that we have a responsibility to support a wider effort being made by our allies in a cause that we can uphold and believe in.
Okay, we've got two more questions at the front. Nikki first.
I'm interested in your blue-green thing.
Yes.
Just wondering, well, what you thought of the green job plan, and also, is blue-green just a greenwash?
You might explain quickly what blue-green is.
The Blue-Greens, that's the National Party's environmental wing. I mean, we have a number of different policy groups, and I'm a member of several of them, but the Blue-Greens is the body that believes essentially in sustainable planning and responsible management of our environment. When I was a student, nobody talked about the environment. And even 10, 15 years ago, you were still seen as a bit of a sort of a fruitcake or somebody on the edge of politics. Now you could not be a mainstream party without having a credible environmental policy. And I'm proud to say that the Blue-Greens is probably the biggest pressure group or policy group within the National Party. It's certainly not a greenwash, whitewash, whatever. We genuinely believe that we have got to have a focus on long-term sustainable management of our environment, cleaning up our rivers. There are all sorts of things that are happening. We have, after all, taken steps with the ETS to try to ensure that we can meet our carbon emissions reduction program. That is important. So there are all sorts of things. I believe in it, and no, it's not a greenwash.
So then you've got people like Nick Smith, right, who are talking about the ETS and stuff, and saying that we can push these things back because it's fine, because our Kyoto agreement will expire in a while and we don't need to worry about these things. It just seems like sometimes when the National Blue-Greens talk about green things, it's not quite...
Well, no, it's about balancing what we need to do with the environment with what is in our interests as a country, what's good for our production, primary production in particular, and what is also appropriate given where we are in the world. We're a tiny country. We have a very small percentage of the world's emissions. We believe it's responsible for us to play our part, but not to move so far ahead of our trading partners that we actually kneecap our main source of export earnings, which is our primary production. So it's a balancing act, and I think we've probably got it pretty much right.
I'm aware we could talk about that topic for another hour, and we've only got about 3 minutes left, so I'll just quickly go to Mark, who's a New Zealand politics student. He's got a question.
Hi, Mark.
Do you have cabinet aspirations?
I do.
Good question.
How long do you see yourself in politics, though? Like,
well, I'm 50 now. I'm in one of the most marginal seats in the country. In fact, Hamilton West is a bellwether electorate. You could cancel the general election, have an election in my seat only if I win it, National will be in government. If we lose it, Labor will be, because that's been the history of the seat. Do I have cabinet aspirations? Yes, I do. I would hope to be there for at least another 12 years, but that'll be in the hands of the voters.
With what sort of portfolios would interest you?
Well, I'm interested in law and order, social policy, education, foreign affairs, those sorts of areas. If you offered me Minister of the Rugby World Cup, I'd be quite happy to take that on as well. I've got, as you said in your introduction, the interest in the arts. I'd love that. I've got a pretty wide range of interests, and I'll be happy if the PM gives me a call sometime. I'd be only too happy to say thank you very much. Yes, I'd be honoured to serve.
So, given that, I'm sure you're predicting your own success in the coming Hamilton West election. I'm
optimistic, but you would never, in that seat, you'd never take anything for granted.
Okay.
I mean, after all, when the tide turns against our government, my seat will be one of the first to be lost. That's the history of the game.
Wow, okay. So can you give us any other election predictions? Firstly, let's start with the minnows, the Mana Party. What's going to happen there?
Probably one, maybe two.
What would be the second one, a list seat or another
Yeah, the second,
electorate?
definitely a list seat.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll only be one electorate.
Okay. Maori Party, what's going to happen there?
3 or 4.
Okay.
Depends. The Te Tai Tonga, the southern Maori electorate, is the one that at the moment looks pretty close, maybe marginally favouring the Labor candidate, but the Maori Party have got a good MP in Raihuri Katane.
How well will the Greens do?
They look as if they'll do better, than they get more seats than they've got at the moment, and that's probably going to happen because just as in 2002 I was a candidate for National, as we were seeing our primary vote go down and down and down, the Labor Party have recently seen that, and of course if they lose votes they'll primarily go to the Greens. So if Labor go down, the Greens will probably come up a bit.
So obviously there's this huge gap between Labor and National in the polls. Is that going to narrow to some extent or to a large extent? Or?
That's harder to tell because usually that happens as the focus of an election campaign comes on. You normally see the gap close, but I do remember as a National candidate the gap didn't close, in fact it widened, although actually both National and Labor went down from the start of the campaign to the end of it, because you get the oxygen of an election campaign and the minor parties tend to come up a bit.
Okay.
So it's hard to tell. I can't predict that one.
Now, post-election, what sort of coalition configuration do you think could happen? What are the possibilities?
If I had to put money on it, I'd probably say the current configuration is most likely.
You think, oh, sorry, I forgot to ask about ACT. They're not necessarily dead. So
no.
Are they...
Hard to predict that as well. I mean, certainly if a poll were taken today, probably only 2 MPs.
Yeah. So,
but they'll have to campaign very well to get up to their current number. I mean, they've got 5 at the moment. I'm guessing probably 2 or 3.
Okay. So do you think another coalition could happen between the Maori Party and National? And what about the Greens?
Oh, it's certainly a possibility. We've got a memorandum of understanding with the Greens on a number of issues, and that comes back to Nikki's point. Yeah. And I mean, the home installation program is a very good one, and I think it's worked incredibly well. There are health benefits as well.
I mean, the speculation that there could potentially be a coalition with the Greens. What, do you think we should be considering this?
I think a formal coalition is unlikely, and after all, the Greens have ruled us out for that. But can we work with them on a number of issues? Yes, we can. And remains to be seen what could happen. I mean, there is still a possibility that a weak Labor-led government with a stronger Green caucus, and Winston if he got over the line, because we've ruled him out. If Winston's over the line, that's another perhaps 6 or 7 MPs, and then you probably have Hone Harawira with the balance of power. Okay. Now that would be interesting.
Now,
I don't think that would be in the best interest of the country, but it could happen.
Of course, you've been up against Winston Peters before. You ran against him in Tauranga, didn't you?
That's right, in 2002.
So just to finish off, will he be back?
No.
No, he's out of it.
I think so. But I mean, You never rule him out completely.
Oh, you were not ruling
You
it.
never rule him out completely, but I don't believe he'll be back.
Okay. Okay, well, thanks a lot, and that's been wonderful. We've learnt a lot.
Thank you, Bryce. I've enjoyed it.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.